The memory is etched in high definition, a film reel I can't and wouldn't eject. It wasn't just the laughter, it was the symphony of it. Leo's, a triumphant adolescent crowing that cracked on the word man as he hung out the window of my Ford Explorer. Chloe's, a high-pitched performative squeal, the same one she used when a pop star appeared on TV. And Sarah's? Sarah's was a low, rolling chuckle, a sound of pure, unadulterated victory. It was the soundtrack to the sight of my own life driving away from me, the taillights bleeding into the bruised purple and orange of the Nevada sunset until they were swallowed by the creeping dusk. "Find your own way back, old man." Leo's words, meant to be a punchline, hung in the rapidly cooling air. I stood on the cracked concrete of the Sierra Skies Gas and Go, a place so remote it felt less like a destination and more like a mistake. The wind, a dry, whispering breath from the desert, plucked at my jacket. I patted my pockets with a numb, automatic rhythm. Phone? In the car's console, probably buzzing with their mock-concerned texts by now. Wallet? Next to it. My fingers closed around two objects in my right jacket pocket, the cold, familiar teeth of my house keys and a single, crumpled $10 bill. The keys were a joke in terrible taste. The $10 was a calculation. Just enough to make a call and suffer, not enough to actually solve anything. The prank had been brewing since Elko, 100 miles back. The whispered conferences at the rest stop, the snickers stifled behind hands when I got back in the car. I'd felt the conspiratorial energy, a buzzing hive I was excluded from. I'd dismissed it. Just kids being kids. Sarah winding them up. I was the steady one, the boring one, the foundation upon which their fun was built. The emotions didn't crash over me. They detonated in sequence. First, a blank, static disbelief. This is a dream. They're just around the bend, waiting to leap out. Then, a seismic surge of anger so hot it tightened my throat. 300 miles from home, my own family. And finally, the cold, heavy truth, settling in my gut like a stone. This wasn't an anomaly. This was the culmination. My mind flashed back to the morning of my promotion to senior VP, a day I'd worked towards for a decade. I couldn't find my lucky tie. We were late. I was frantic. Sarah found it an hour later, stuffed in the bottom of the garden compost bin. "Oh, silly me, it must have gotten tangled up when I was gardening," she'd said, her eyes gleaming. "Can't you take a joke, Mark? You're so tense." I saw Leo, at 14, holding my father's Patek Philippe watch, the only thing of true value the old man had ever owned. "Just admiring it, Dad." It was missing for a week. I was sick, imagining it lost forever. He found it in his gym bag. "It was just a joke. Lighten up." The relief was so profound I'd hugged him, forgiving him instantly, absorbing the hurt myself. For 20 years, I was the designated shock absorber. I told myself their laughter was the price of admission for a vibrant, chaotic family. But standing there, under the buzzing, insectoid glow of the gas station sign, the vast, star-dusted silence of the desert pressing down, I saw it with terrifying clarity. I wasn't part of the family. I was its resource, its prey. The script was written. I was to call, sputtering and furious. My humiliation would be the final seasoning on their adventure. They would magnanimously return, and I would be eternally grateful. The punchline to a story that would be told and retold, each telling another brick in the wall of my subjugation. I looked down at the $10 bill in my palm. The face of Alexander Hamilton seemed to stare back with grim irony. Then I looked up. The Milky Way was a spilled diamond necklace across the velvet black. The air was clean, scented with sage and dust. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of potential. I crumpled the bill in my fist. I didn't call. The door to the gas station chimed as I pushed it open. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale coffee and fried food. A grizzled man with a face like a topographic map of a hard life looked up from a dog-eared copy of a Louis L'Amour novel. His name tag read, Hank. He took in my empty hands, my shell-shocked expression. His eyes, a faded blue, were sharp and missed nothing. "Rough night, partner?" he asked, his voice a dry rasp, like gravel under tires. I met his gaze. For the first time in years, my voice didn't waver, didn't seek approval. It was just my own. You could say that, I replied. I gestured vaguely toward the empty highway. But I have a feeling it's about to get a whole lot better. The next 48 hours were a lesson in brutal, beautiful efficiency. The $10 bought me a large, bitter coffee and a detailed map of the western United States. I spread it on the sticky counter, the paper crinkling under my hands that had once been stained with grease, but had grown soft and pale from a life of keyboards and conference calls. Hank watched me, sipping his own coffee. "Where you headed?" "Nowhere I was," I said, and the truth of it was liberating. Turned out Hank wasn't just the attendant, he was the owner. And his night mechanic handyman had quit a week prior, lured away by a casino job in Reno. "Damn kid left me in a lurch," he grumbled. "I'm too old to be fixing busted fuel pumps at 2 a.m. A lifetime ago, I'd put myself through college doing exactly that. The muscle memory was still there, buried under layers of corporate polish. "I can fix a fuel pump," I said. He hired me on the spot. The room above the garage was a tiny Spartan space with a cot, a sink, and a window that looked out onto the endless, dark expanse. It was the most peaceful room I'd ever inhabited. The next morning, I used the rusty payphone outside, its cord twisted like a licorice whip. The first call was to my office. My assistant, Brenda, picked up. "Mark Evans's office. How may I help you?" "Brenda, it's Mark." "Mark, thank goodness. Everyone's been asking about the Q3 projections. Mr. Henderson was looking for you." "I quit," I said, the words feeling alien and powerful. A stunned silence. "I'm sorry? You quit?" "Mark, is everything okay?" "Everything is fine. Effective immediately. Please email me the paperwork." I gave her a temporary email I'd set up at the local library. "Goodbye, Brenda." The second call was to my brother, David. "Dave." "Mark? Jesus, where are you?" "Sarah is blowing up my phone. She says you never came back from the restroom at some gas station." "What the hell happened?" "They left me, Dave," I said, my voice flat, devoid of the emotion he expected. "My wife and my children. They coordinated it, waited until I was vulnerable, and drove off. They left me here with $10 and a set of house keys." As a joke. The silence on the other end was profound. I could hear the gears turning in his head, trying to process a reality that didn't fit the happy family narrative. "My God, Mark, that's not a joke. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm coming to get you." "No," I said, the word a solid, immovable object. "I'm not coming back. I need a favor. A big one. Go to the house. Get my toolbox from the garage, the big red metal one Dad gave me. And in my office closet, under the loose floorboard in the back left corner, there's a small, fireproof lockbox. Bring them to me." "Mark, think about this," he pleaded, his voice tight with worry. "The kids. They're just kids. They're stupid. And Sarah, she must be panicking." "They expected me to panic," I replied, the clarity like a shard of ice in my heart. "They expected me to be the punchline. I'm rewriting the ending. Will you help me, David? Not as my brother who wants to fix this, but as my brother who trusts me." He let out a long, shuddering sigh, the sound of capitulation. Yeah, I'll help you." When David's truck pulled in 2 days later, he looked like he'd aged a decade. He crushed me in a bear hug. "They've called the police in 3 counties, he mumbled into my shoulder. "But without evidence of foul play, they think you had a mental break, or an affair." "We didn't have a fight," I stated, pulling back and looking him in the eye. "There was no argument. They marooned me. It was the grand finale of their hilarious prank." He flinched. He handed over the toolbox, its familiar weight a comfort, and the lockbox. Inside was my passport, my birth certificate, and $15,000 in cash, my fund, meticulously siphoned from freelance consulting gigs Sarah had never known about. A life raft I'd built, piece by piece, for a shipwreck I must have sensed was coming. "What's the plan?" David asked, his eyes scanning my face, looking for the brother he knew. "I'm going to disappear," I said, handing him a small velvet pouch. "And I'm going to live. Sell this for me. Keep 10%. He opened the pouch. My father's Patek Philippe gleamed in the desert sun. "Mark, you love this watch." "Leo used it to prank me," I said simply. "Its history is tainted. Let it fund my future." The watch, combined with my cash, was a king's ransom. Hank, it turned out, had a cousin whose friend was retiring from a small auto repair shop in Seabrook, Oregon, a town clinging to the rocky Pacific coast. The price was a song. I bought it. I became Mark Nolan, using our mother's maiden name. In a world of digital footprints, I was a ghost. Sarah had managed all our online accounts, our bills, our social presence. I was just the quiet man who went to work and came home. Shedding that skin was as easy as stepping out of a shadow. As David drove away, I stood and watched until his truck was a speck. The wind coming off the ocean smelled of salt, pine, and freedom. For the first time in 20 years, I took a full, deep breath. The first year in Seabrook was not about building a new life, but about excavating the man buried under the rubble of the old one. The ghost of their laughter was a tenacious haunt. I'd wake in the middle of the night, my heart pounding, braced for a prank, for my tools to be hidden, for sugar to be in my salt shaker. But the silence in my apartment above the shop remained unbroken, a sanctuary I curated myself. My days found a new, honest rhythm. The salt-laced air scoured my lungs clean of office stagnation. My hands, once soft, were once again etched with black lines of grease, the calluses on my palms a badge of honor. I fixed the trucks of grizzled fishermen who spoke in grunts and appreciated a job well done. I worked on the rusty old Volvos of artists who paid in watercolor paintings of the sea. I learned the tides, the patterns of the storms, the names of my neighbors. In the quiet evenings, I dissected my past with the dispassionate focus of a surgeon. I saw the pattern now, so clear it was a wonder I'd missed it. Sarah's jokes were strategic strikes. The day I closed the Thompson account, she accidentally donated my favorite suit to Goodwill. When I was made partner, she served my favorite meal to the dog. It was a campaign to ensure no success of mine went unpunished, to keep me perpetually off balance and grateful for any scrap of kindness. The kids were her eager apprentices. They learned that my time was interruptible. My feelings were a joke. My love was an infinite, unconditional resource they could weaponize against me. The betrayal at the gas station wasn't the act itself. It was the final, logical conclusion of a philosophy they had all internalized. Dad is not a person with dignity. Dad is a function. David, my tether to the past, called with updates he thought would tug on my heartstrings. Sarah filed for divorce, Mark. Abandonment. Don't contest it, I said, watching a gray whale spout in the distance. She can have the house, the accounts, everything. Mark, that's your life. It was the price of my freedom, Dave. A bargain. He told me Leo had flunked out of his freshman year at college, adrift without the financial and emotional structure I had provided. Chloe had been caught shoplifting, a cry for attention from a father who was no longer there to be manipulated. The hilarious prank had blown up in their faces. The puppet had not only cut its strings, he had walked off the stage and found a better play. I felt a distant, hollow ache, not guilt, a profound sadness for the people they had chosen to become and for the people they might have been. They were casualties of their mother's war, but they had also been willing soldiers. My empathy was no longer a bottomless well. It had run dry in the Nevada desert. I could no longer burn down my own hard-won peace to provide them with warmth. 5 years, almost to the day. The rhythm of my life was as steady as the tides. I was deep in the engine bay of my '68 Mustang, a project of pure passion, her engine block a complex puzzle of potential and power. The metallic clink of my wrench was a meditation. The bell on the shop door chimed, a foreign sound in my late afternoon solitude. "Be right with you," I called out, my voice muffled by the hood. I wiped my hands on a red shop rag, the grease a permanent part of my fingerprints now. I walked out from the garage bay, and the world tilted on its axis. They stood there, a triptych of my past life, silhouetted against the bright Oregon daylight. They looked frayed, diminished. Sarah, once so meticulously put together, wore a cheap rain jacket over jeans. Her hair, formerly a salon-perfect blonde, was streaked with gray and frizzed by the coastal humidity. Lines of stress and bitterness were carved around her mouth. Leo had a sullen, lost look in his eyes, his posture a slouch of defeat. And Chloe, her eyes were wide, darting from the vintage car posters on the wall to the tools on my bench, as if searching for the DNA of the man she used to know. The only sound was the relentless distant crash of the Pacific against the cliffs. "Mark." Sarah's voice was a breathy tremor, barely audible. She took a half step forward, her hand fluttering to her chest. "My God, we found you." I didn't speak. I simply observed them. These three strangers who had once been the gravitational center of my universe. "Dad?" Chloe's voice was small, a child's voice coming from a young woman's body. Is it really you?" "Why are you here?" I asked. My tone was the same one I used with tourists asking for directions to the lighthouse. Calm, neutral, utterly devoid of the history that choked the air between us. "Why are we here?" Sarah repeated, her voice cracking and rising an octave. The hysterical edge was right there, barely contained. "We've been looking for you for 5 years, Mark. 5 years. We thought you were dead, or lying in a ditch somewhere." "You knew exactly where I was when you left," I stated, the facts as solid and unyielding as the concrete floor beneath my feet. "At the Sierra Skies Gas and Go, 300 miles from home. You seemed very confident in your decision at the time." "It was a joke!" Leo exploded, his voice too loud, too raw. He gestured wildly, a parody of his younger self. "A stupid joke! Why couldn't you just take a joke for once in your life? Why did you have to be so goddamn sensitive?" There it was. The family mantra, unearthed from the tomb of our past. I looked at my son, now a man by age but not by character, and felt a wave of pity so immense it was almost nauseating. "A joke, Leo," I said, my voice still dangerously even, "is when everyone finds it funny. Tell me, was I laughing? Were you including me in the laughter, or was I the entire punchline?" His bravado deflated. He looked at the floor, his shoulders slumping, and shoved his hands deep into his pockets. Sarah moved then, a desperate, fluttering motion. "Mark, please. We have been through hell. Absolute hell. The kids. They lost their father. I lost my husband. We're sorry. Okay? We are so sorry. It was a terrible, terrible mistake." And there, in her eyes, I finally saw the truth I had been waiting for. It wasn't remorse for the profound cruelty of their act. It was regret for the consequences they had endured. The bill had come due on their fun, and they couldn't afford to pay. Their favorite prop had walked off the set, and the entire production had collapsed. "It wasn't a mistake, Sarah," I said, each word a carefully placed stone. "A mistake is a miscalculation. What you did was a conscious, deliberate act of cruelty. It was the final scene in a 20-year play of emotional abuse. You didn't lose a husband. You abandoned one. And they," I said, nodding toward my children, "didn't lose a father. They were accomplices in driving him away." "Abusive?" she shrieked, the mask of the wounded wife shattering completely, her face contorted with a rage I knew well. "Don't you dare! You were the one who abandoned your family. You walked away from your children." "I didn't walk away," I corrected her, a strange sense of peace settling over me. "I accepted the freedom you so generously gifted me. You gave me a $10 bill in the entire world. It was, without a doubt, the most thoughtful present you ever gave me." Chloe began to cry then, not the performative sobs of her youth, but silent, hopeless tears that carved clean paths through her foundation. "We just want you to come home, Daddy," she whispered. The word daddy was a phantom limb, a ghost of a feeling from a life I no longer recognized. It sparked nothing in me. "I am home, Chloe," I said, my voice softening, not with affection, but with finality. "This is my home. The man you called Daddy was a role I was forced to play. That role is over. There is no home with you, not anymore." "You can't mean that," Sarah whispered, her face a ghastly white. "After 20 years. After everything we built. Our family." "The family you built, Sarah," I said, the clarity of half a decade crystallizing in this moment, "was a kingdom where I was the court jester. A prank is only a prank when everyone is laughing. If everyone isn't laughing, it's not a prank. It's abuse. And I am done. I have been done for 5 very peaceful years." I looked at each of them one last time, the architect, the disciple, the acolyte. I felt the vast, empty space where my love for them used to reside. "I don't hate you," I said, and it was the most truthful thing I'd ever spoken. To hate them would be to feel something, to grant them a piece of my soul they no longer deserved. "I feel nothing for you at all, and that is why you need to leave, and that is why you should never, ever come back." I turned my back. It was the most powerful gesture of my life. I walked to the '68 Mustang, the scent of oil and metal, a welcome familiarity. I picked up my wrench, the cool, solid weight a comfort in my palm. I heard Sarah's choked, guttural sob, Leo's muttered, "Let's just go, this is pathetic," and the soft, definitive ching of the door closing. The silence that rushed back in was not an absence. It was a presence. It was my silence. It was earned. It was mine. I never saw them again.